My criticisms actually for the Palestinian policy did not start with Oslo. It started a long time before Oslo. And I expected 14, 15 years before Oslo that the PLO will come to such a conclusion. That's the Oslo conclusion. So I was not surprised or astonished about what happened. It was complementary with my expectations. And that's why I immediately criticized the Oslo Accords. I thought that the Oslo Accords is part of the PLO policy, which has been over the years in accordance with the Israeli policies. That is, recognizing Israel as part of this part of the world and securing a civil and a religious life for the Palestinians without any true political rights. I thought that the PLO leadership in general has been following steps towards such a conclusion. And I think it misled the Palestinians over the years. And unfortunately, this policy did cost the Palestinians so many sacrifices in lives in terms of economic well-being and so on. That's why I was very critical of the Oslo Accords, and I expected that the Oslo Accords do not actually give any kind of sovereignty for the Palestinians, and they don't offer any real solution for the rights of the Palestinians. Although the Palestinian leadership at the outset of the Oslo told the Palestinians that there will be a state with Jerusalem its capital, and there will be complete withdrawal of Israeli forces, and the refugees, the Palestinian refugees, will be back to Palestine. And also they told the Palestinians that milliards of dollars will be poured here, so we will be very rich. And it turned out that all of these were lies, actually. I said that in the early days. I told the people, don't listen to that. And I even wrote a booklet, and I distributed 10,000 copies of that booklet so as to educate the people on the Oslo Accords. And I told them that there will be no money. The detainees and the prisoners will not be all out. The refugees will not be back. And there will be no state and no milliards. So don't dream of any of that. Unfortunately, I came out to be right. What I said has been the truth. And it has been unfolding over the days, over the months. And in the latest crisis that accompanied the bombs in Israel, the people here in the West Bank and Gaza discovered very clearly the essence of the Oslo Accords. And now they have concluded that there is no state and there is no independence.
What were the specifics of the closure after the bombings that really played out your prediction? Some specific things that happened as a result of the closure?
Like, for instance, the Palestinians discovered, after the closures, the Palestinians discovered that they are actually not a smooth, harmonious, geographic piece of land, but they discovered that they are islands divided by Israeli forces. And they experienced the first, a new kind of curfew. That's a curfew between villages and towns. That thing we did not experience when occupation was of direct action in our cities. So they discovered this kind of curfew is really terrible. It's much more terrible than the curfews we experienced over the years. And that's what I told the Palestinians after the Oslo Accords, that there will be no independent state, but there will be islands here and there. The island of Nablus, the island of Jenin, the island of Tulkarm, the island of Der Sharaf, that's a village, and every village and every town will be an island of its own. So they discovered that they have been cut into hundreds of pieces. And also, they discovered that the Legislative Council is not a legislative council, actually. It's just a council. And it's not meant to legislate, because it doesn't have the right to legislate, particularly on major issues, like the issue of sovereignty, the issue of security, the issue of international relations, and so on. They probably have certain rights to legislate on daily life issues, but also in accordance with the Oslo Accords and the Taba Accords. That they should not violate these accords. So they are not actually a legislative council, but they are a council. They are meant to implement the accords. So they discovered that all this process of elections and the legislative council and so on does not amount to a real thing. And they got to know that the members of this council couldn't go freely to Gaza. They were just prevented from entering Israel for so many hours, and even one member was turned back to Nablus. He even couldn't reach Gaza. And also, the people came to be sure that there is no true withdrawal of Israeli forces. That is, if the Palestinian forces, the Palestinian police, does not fulfill the needs of Israeli security, then the Israelis are ready to enter the towns. So they discovered that the Palestinians actually are just mere agents of the Israelis. And the Israelis gave orders to Yasser Arafat that he should do this and that. That is, to detain the people, to try to discover the clandestine cells that belongs to Hamas and Jihad, and so on. So the Palestinian Authority has been doing what the Israelis have been doing. And also on the contrary, that the Palestinians have been very hard just to tell the Israelis that we are very faithful and we are loyal to these accords and we are willing, actually, to fulfill your security needs. And I was one of those people who were detained. I was put in jail for a couple of days. I don't know why, but probably just to show the Israelis that we are hitting hard on those stupid, erratic people. Yeah. So the closure was very beneficial in a way that the people, the Palestinians, knew exactly what the Oslo Accords are.
Were you associated with one of the Islamist parties? Is that why they arrested you?
No, actually, I'm not associated with any party, but I am an activist. I think I have a certain kind of influence, and I am anti-Oslo Accords. I am an outspoken person. That's why they put me in jail, probably just to tell the Israelis that we are doing our best.
Do you think they were mistreating? Well, maybe you could talk more about the PA's crackdown on Hamas now, after the bombings. What is the political significance of that? How have the Palestinian Authority been treating and the Israelis as well? What does this mean for so-called Palestinian democracy?
Well, if we want to talk about Palestinian democracy, there is no democracy at all. And probably if you want to challenge this thing philosophically, we might end up saying that the United States itself is not democratic. Probably there is a kind of a dictatorship, especially for the mass media. And if the United States is so, how would the Palestinian Authority be? It's completely undemocratic. It's far away from democracy. It's a very, it's a dictatorship with all its means. It's very similar to the dictatorship in most parts of the Arab countries. And the crackdown on Hamas under these situations, this situation doesn't mean actually a lot. If it's meant to weaken the Islamic trend, I think they are wrong. On the contrary, they are helping the expansion of the Islamists in this part of the country, or in this part of the Arab world. This is similar to what's happening in the Arab countries. The more dictatorship there is, the more expansion for the Islamists. Although the Islamists have their own camp, a strong camp in the Arab countries, but the stupidity of Arab leaders and Arab political systems are helping what they think that they are the enemies. They are helping. And actually, the United States is helping toward this end. The United States is thinking of cracking down on the Muslims instead of trying to understand them and cooperate with them. So these kinds of actions are not going to help. On the contrary, there will be more underground activity, I believe, and more public expansion and more public support for the Islamic movements.
Could you describe the kinds of methods that are being used to crack down on the Islamist movements, particularly here in Palestine, in the West Bank and Gaza?
Yeah, mostly it's night visits. That's what we call them, night visits. Like, for instance, when they arrested me, they came at 2:30 in the morning. Probably more than 40 police came to this house. Only 10 people entered my house, but the rest of them were in the street and down at the entrance of this building. So they make these night visits. Sometimes they phone certain people to come to the security departments. We have so many security departments here. Some are put in jail here in Nablus or in main cities, and some are taken to Jericho, for instance. Some of them are treated well. Some of them are tortured, and we know that there is one security department, Palestinian security department, that's torturing people. They are using methods similar to that of the Israelis, and even probably harsher. At the time of the Israelis, at least we had mass media, we had international organizations who were trying to know what's happening to the Palestinians. But now it's Palestinians torturing Palestinians, and nobody cares, apparently. Yeah.
Could you talk about your specific case? You're publishing this article and the shooting and incidents that happened, and how you were treated.
Yeah. Well, I was shot on the 20th of August 1995. I was hit by 4 bullets. And that was because of an article I wrote in a Gazan newspaper entitled Democracy Under the President, in which I said that there is no democracy in the Palestinian society. There is only dictatorship. And I spoke namely of Arafat. And I said he is the sole dictator. And he is the only one who decides, even on very small matters. And nobody else in this country decides. So He said some people to shoot me. I know them. I know who sent them. I know to which organization or to which security department they belong. And while I was coming back to my house from the university, I was on foot. A couple of people just walked into the street, and they asked me whether I was Dr. Qassem. I told them no. I was very cautious anyhow because I knew that there were previous threats. So I told them no. They didn't believe me. Yeah, I started to look for a certain kind of to hide away. But I couldn't see. They were in a hurry of their affair. Anyhow, they shot at me using a pistol. I was hit with 4 bullets, 3 in my legs and 1 in my hand. I still cannot use my hand efficiently anyhow. It's still numb. It's not normal. Yeah.
Do you think they were just trying to scare you, or were they trying to?
Well, anyhow, I think it's not a matter of scaring me. It's shooting. It is shooting. It's meant to shed blood. That was a true reflection of Palestinian democracy for me. Probably they didn't mean to kill me because they were shooting at a very close range. They could just move the pistol a little bit upward. But at least that was a message. That was a message for me and for other Palestinian intellectuals. That's just shut up, don't say anything. If you do, we'll shoot you. And I came to learn afterwards that the person who shot me is an Israeli agent, and he was employed by the Palestinians to shoot at me. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Did you heed the message?
No, I think they came to the wrong address. Anyhow, I am not the kind of person. I am not a kind of person who listens to threats or who is ready to shut up. In other words, but I continue to write. I continue to speak up, and I will continue to do so as long as I am alive.
What alternatives do you see to the
What's that again?
alternative?
Yeah, what's
What
alternative?
alternative do you see to the present?
Well, the alternative to the present, yeah. Well, the alternative to the present situation, actually, I talked about for more than 20 years. I have been talking about that for a long time. It's very hard to talk about it in details in this kind of interview, but I will give you hints anyhow. Well, for so many years, I thought that the Palestinian revolution was going astray. And it wasn't a true revolution. A true revolution should be of a very high moral standard, so as to be convincing for its own people, for the peoples around, and for the people of the world. So much of the Palestinian revolution, unfortunately, was directed toward things other than that. And instead of being convincing, the Arabs, the Muslims, our friends, and so on, turned their backs to the Palestinians. And together with the moral standard, I thought that we should do things that will improve our capabilities over the time. Like, for instance, there should be a certain kind of underground organization. And turned out that the Palestinian revolution is full of members of intelligence agencies all over the world. That the Americans, they had their own men in the PLO, the Jordanians, the Israelis, the British, the French, and everybody had agents. So we had no secrets. And these agents were not just trying to record events and to know what we have been doing, but they were trying to damage the Palestinian reputation also. So I thought that the whole thing should be changed. The whole PLO should be turned upside down with a new organization and with a strong underground organization. That's because we don't have an army. A regular army we don't have. We cannot face Israel or any other enemy with a regular army. So the best way is to have an underground organization. Israel itself, without the underground organization, it couldn't succeed, or it could never be Israel, could never emerge into a state. And also, I thought that we should be close to the Arabs as a people and to the Muslims, not to governments. Those governments and political systems actually are puppets of the United States. Without the consent of the United States, for instance, Hussein cannot stay 1 hour in his office, or Hosni Mubarak, or Zain bin Abidin bin Ali. We know, they are CIA agents. So we cannot be with close ties with these people, with the political system. We should have close ties with the people. What happened that we made so many things that turned the people away from us. The Lebanese, for instance, they hate us because of the PLO, what the PLO has been doing in Lebanon. The Jordanians, at certain time, they used to hate us, probably until now. The people in Tunis, after they experienced the PLO, they started to think bad about the Palestinians. So the whole policy of the PLO towards the Arabs was actually disastrous. And even in Kuwait, we stayed in Kuwait for so many years, and we had hundreds of thousands of Palestinians over there. We couldn't, over the years, make friends who could defend the rights of the Palestinians who have been working in Kuwait for over 30 or 40 years. We didn't have a friend. So why should we stay doing these things? And in the West Bank and Gaza, I thought that we should also have policies that would strengthen our situation. Like, for instance, why should 100,000 Palestinians work in Israel, while Arab money, which was allocated in 1978, was meant to help the Palestinians to create jobs? All of this Arab money was spent or wasted, actually. It was wasted. Laborers and peasants, who are the backbone of what we can term the Palestinian economy here in the West Bank and Gaza, received nothing. Only wealthy people, corrupt people got the money. And they created a kind of consumption mentality which is very dangerous to our situation. It's very good to have consumption goods, that's nice, but we are under occupation. We have priorities. We should have the mentality of production, not consumption. So we left the Palestinians under the mercy of the Israelis. Once they close the borders, then the Palestinians start to cry. And that's ridiculous. How would I face people all over the world telling them that I want independence, at the same time I am crying for a job in Israel? That's a contradiction. Nobody will believe me. And once I depend upon the enemy, on the loaf of bread, that means that I'm nothing. I haven't been doing anything over the years. I am lazy. I am dependent on others, and so on. That does not give me the true and the good image that will lead the people all over the world to support me. And I refer to the Americans. The Americans do not have any respect for lazy people. They do not have any respect for defeated people. They don't have any respect for dependent people. You got to work. You got to do your own things. You got to be productive. You got to be brave. You got to be courageous. That's the way you get the respect of the people. Unfortunately, the PLO just did the opposite. So the whole Palestinian policy turned out to be a kind of begging, rather a kind of trying to impose a certain thing on the negotiating table, just asking the Israelis and Americans, please do that for us. There is no please in the international relations. There are cards played on the table. If you don't have any card, then you are out of the game. And we are out of the game. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So these are just outlines of what I have been saying over the years. But the PLO didn't listen. I think the Islamic movements are grabbing these points. And they are trying to improve the situation. But the war against the Islamic movements is very huge. And everybody apparently is working against the Israelis. That's everybody in power. The Americans, the Europeans, the Arab governments, even the Palestinians. So they are confronting a very strong enemy all over the world. And I think they will finally emerge victorious. And it's better for the Europeans and the Americans to come to an understanding with the Islamic movements rather than facing them. Because facing them means very bad damage in this part of the world. We're referring to the Islamists or to the Islamic movements. Let's talk about their image first in the United States. Actually, the image drawn for the Islamic movements in the United States is drawn only by the mass media. And I said that there is a dictatorship of the mass media in the West, especially in the United States. So what's in the interest of the people who control the mass media is thought to be in the interest of the Americans, unfortunately. And it might be to the contrary. The Islamic movements are not terrorist groups. And I want to remind the people here and there, and especially in the United States, that terror has been a tool all over the world, especially in the western part of the world. The Americans themselves used terror against the Indians. The Israelis themselves have been practicing terrorism since 1948, and before that, the Zionists. The Zionists made so many massacres and mass killings against the Palestinians in Deir Yassin, in Lid, in Haifa, in Dawaimi, in Al-Aqsa, everywhere. And they have been killing kids, women, over the years. Unfortunately, that's not labeled as terrorism in the West. That is true terrorism. And the Palestinian people, or at least 3 million Palestinians, are still living in camps, in refugee camps. And they are living there because of Israeli arms. That is because of the Israeli strength, airplanes, cannons, artilleries, and so on, which the Israelis are supplied by the West. That's terror. That's state terror. That's because they have an army. We don't have an army. So we have to defend ourselves. The Islamic movements do not believe in violence. And they don't want to kill anybody. But there are Palestinian rights that should be restored. The Americans and the rest of the world apparently are ignoring the rights of the Palestinians. So they are pushing the Palestinians towards certain actions that might not be popular, but they are acts that have been tools of most nations, especially in the West. So the image drawn for the Islamic movements in the West is in the interests of certain people, not in the interest of the Americans. That's one point. The other, what makes the Muslim movements popular in this part of the world is the following. The Arabs have been defeated over the years by the West and the Israelis. So there is the sense, the feeling of being defeated. There is a great disappointment, a great feeling of defeat inside every Arab person. And the West, according to the Arabs, has been exploiting the wealth of the Arabs, especially petroleum. And the United States sent 500,000 soldiers to the Gulf to fight Iraq. If Kuwait did not have any petroleum, probably the United States would never think of defending Kuwait. So the West has been exploiting the wealth of the Arabs. The West also, according to our beliefs, it might be true, it might not, but that's what we believe. The West has been obstructing Arab unity. And they have been inciting Arab states against each other. So the Arabs will continue fighting each other. And sometimes the Arabs against Muslims, like what happened between Iraq and Iran. And the West, the Americans, have been supplying Israel with arms. Above that the Americans are supporting the leaders of the Arab countries in their dictatorship against the Arab people. So the Arabs are fed up. They want a kind of savior. They look at the Islamic movements as a savior. Now, if the Americans think that the Islamic movement should be weakened, the road is very easy if they are interested in such a situation. Let the Arabs experience and practice their own freedom. Let them have their own democracy, and they elect whom they see fit. And I am sure if the Islamic movements win the elections, they will try to cooperate with all countries all over the world. But if you face them and say that they are backward, they are stupid, they are so and so, then actually you are waging a war, and you will be facing strong people who are willing to die more than they are willing to live.
Well, maybe I could just ask you directly. You've pointed out that Israel and the United States have used killings of civilians to further their goals, and that's what Hamas has done in bus bombings. Does that mean that you support this as a tactic?
It's not a matter of support. It is an objective phenomenon. It's objective. It's independent of my support or lack of support. As long as the Palestinians are, as long as they are disappointed, as long as they are not fulfilling their own national rights, there will be Palestinians who will be fighting the Israelis. And they will be fighting the Israelis according to their ability. That is, if they have the ability to face the Israeli army, they will. If they have the ability to face the Israeli civilians, they will. So according to the ability, they act. So what they can do is just to manufacture a few bombs and explode them here and there. So it is independent of support. It's an objective phenomenon, and it might increase in the future. And the technology of making these bombs might also improve in the future. So the Israelis will find themselves in a very tough situation in the future. And their policies now, closure and bringing all of these leaders to Sharm el-Sheikh and so on, I don't think that will help them.
I have one more question. At least a certain group.
That's our independence. Yeah.
It's not fireworks, I don't think. Certain groups of Palestinian feminists are wary of the rise of the Islamist movement. They say that there's social conservatism attached to the movements that will have or will further hinder the rights of women. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Well, it depends upon how you look at the thing. For me personally, let me clarify one point. There is no difference between men and women. Although I am lenient to Islam, I am a Muslim. I am not part of an Islamic movement, but I am a Muslim. There is no difference, except on physiological phases. And it depends finally on how you philosophize the things. The Islamic movements, for instance, think that the women in the West are slaves because they are meant to use their bodies for a certain kind of interest. And the woman is not actually respected, but her body is respected. That's what they argue. They say here that the Islamic movement wants to pay full respect for the woman, to give her own freedom, to be able to do the work she likes, to fulfill herself in the way she wishes, but at the same time to keep her body respected. That she is not a tool, she is not an instrument, and she is not an object. Once you display the woman's body, that's their argument, as it happens in the West, then she is an object, she's a tool. But they think, but they are saying that they want to liberate women, and there should be actual freedom. So it depends upon how you philosophize the things. We have certain women here, yes, I know, they are very concerned about the situation, that we will have long dresses and so on. They don't oblige anybody. The Islamic movements do not oblige anybody on the way they dress. But they are ready to cooperate on liberating women, but not under the term of women liberation, because they believe in human liberation. That's mankind should be liberated, not women. Also men probably should be liberated. And for me personally, I think that the degree of women liberation is tied, probably in this part of the world, with man's liberation. As long as man is tied to certain conservative trends and certain customs and traditions, he will not be able to cooperate with women to liberate women, because he is not liberated. So there is some concern. Now, aside from the Islamic movement, the Islamic movements, Hamas and Jihad, I personally established a certain kind of a forum, which believes in Islamic thought, but it could be more liberal than other traditional Islamic movements. And we think what we talk about is Islam. And we think that women they should assume their roles in every sphere of life. And at this time of the history of mankind, we cannot afford putting women in houses and homes that just don't do anything except cooking. We cannot afford that. And man should understand that he has been a dictator for so many centuries, and now he should recognize that women are part of the decision in every sphere of life. So in our forum, we are adopting this kind of trend, and probably 60% of our members are women. Yeah.
Can I ask one other question? When I asked you about the popularity of the Islamic movements here, you talked about particularly some things in reaction to the West and disunity among Arabs, but there's also a lot of services and grassroots work that the movements have done to provide for refugees and different groups of people who don't.
Hmm.
Basically, picking up where the PLO, you said, squandered a lot of money that was given to them to create jobs and things like that. It seems that the Islamists have been able to provide things to the people that the PLO.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, according to the popularity of the Islamic movement, yes, aside from what the West has been doing, aside from the disappointment of the Arabs and the Muslims from the political regimes, yeah, the Islamists proved to be more careful about public interest. They are more honest, they are more articulate, they are more efficient than the people in the PLO. At least they believe that the waste of time, the waste of money, of public money, and even personal money is a kind of corruption, and it's haram. That is, it's forbidden by God. So if they want to go to heavens, they should be honest all the way and all the time. They proved to be more honest. That's publicly known here. And they have established certain institutions, that's true. They have furnished certain services, that's true. But their support does not come from the services they give. They come from the political situation they are defending and from their political arguments. And even if their institutions now are annihilated or they are stopped or prevented from functioning, I think their popularity will increase because they will draw more sympathy, more public sympathy. And this has been historically true. The more brutal the governing force becomes, the more popularity the opposition becomes. So there is a kind of negative correlation between what the government is doing and what it's hoping to bring through. So I don't think that cracking down on Hamas institutions, jihad institutions, will help Arafat or the Americans or the Israelis. But that will encourage, or that will bring more popular support for these movements, and that will encourage more underground activity.
Any predictions? Since you're good at predicting, do you have any other predictions for the future?
Yeah, actually I am afraid. Yeah, according to predictions, I am afraid, and I have been saying that for 3 years probably. I'm afraid that the Israelis, with the help of certain Arabs, will bring the situation in Gaza and the West Bank to the point of starvation, together with a kind of internal struggle. So the Palestinians will try to think in different ways. That is, to leave the country, to leave the West Bank, looking for jobs abroad, and the Americans might press the Arabs in the Gulf to open their job markets for the Palestinians. That might happen. And also, the Palestinians might be forced to ask for King Hussein or Israel, because the situation might become very bad to the point that the Palestinians will decide just they want to eat and that's it. That's to hell with the national rights, the political rights. That's, we want security and we want to eat. I am afraid that will happen. Some of it has been unfolding. I said that 3 years ago. I said it over the years. And the Israelis, I think, will try to do so. The possibility of having a civil war is there. as long as the Palestinian Authority is defending Israeli security, then there is a very high possibility that the Palestinians will fight each other. Because there is a good portion of the Palestinians who are willing and desiring and determining to fight Israel. As long as it is so, and the Palestinian Authority is trying to defend the Israelis, then it is logical and the possibility is very high for the Palestinians to fight each other. And I said early in the when Oslo Accords were signed, I said that this is the best recipe for a Palestinian internal conflict. The Oslo Accords are the best recipe, actually, because they put Palestinians against Palestinians. So the struggle will not be for Palestine, the struggle would be among the Palestinians.